My name is Emma. I've always believed stories have power, real, raw, messy, beautiful power. But I didn't always know that. This is a story about how I learned why you must read. A story about moments I didn't think I could survive. Times I struggled to breathe through the weight of sadness, and how books, of all things, saved me. I was 12 when my world began to crumble. My parents, Rachel and Mike, were supposed to be forever, like characters in a fairy tale. But one evening, I overheard the fight that would break everything apart. The words between them were loud, sharp like glass breaking. "I can't do this anymore," my mom yelled. I sat on the stairs, hugging my knees, feeling so small, trying not to make a sound. Tears stung my eyes, but I held them in because crying would mean it was real, and I didn't want it to be real. They divorced. Just like that. And suddenly, my family was like a puzzle with missing pieces. I moved with Mom to a small apartment across town. It was quieter than the house I grew up in. Too quiet. There were no more Sunday dinners with Dad cracking jokes, no more bedtime stories read aloud, and the silence sat heavy on my chest. I remember one night lying awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking, is this what my life is going to be now? That was the night I cried so hard I couldn't breathe, the kind of crying that leaves your face swollen and your heart aching. I stopped talking to my friends because I didn't know how to explain the hole inside me. School became a blur, and even smiling felt like a lie. Mom tried her best, she really did. But she was struggling too. There were days she stayed in bed, her sadness like a thick fog we couldn't escape. One afternoon, I walked to the library. I don't know why, really. I guess I just wanted to be anywhere but home. The librarian, Mrs. Watson, saw me lingering in the fiction section. Looking for something, she asked kindly. I shrugged, wiping my nose on my sleeve, embarrassed. She reached up to a shelf and handed me a worn-out copy of The Secret Garden. "Try this," she said. "It's about a girl who finds light even when everything feels dark." I wasn't sure if it would help, but I took the book anyway. I had nothing to lose. That night, I read until the sun came up. For the first time in months, my heart didn't feel so heavy. The story of Mary Lennox, a lonely girl finding a hidden garden, felt like a reflection of my own life. I realized that even when things seem broken beyond repair, there's always a chance for something beautiful to grow. Reading became my lifeline. Each book one opened was like finding a door to a new world, where things made sense and people fought through their struggles. I cried with characters, celebrated with them, and through their journeys, I found pieces of myself. When I read Wonder by R.J. Palacio, I saw how Augie Pullman, despite being different, found kindness in places he never expected. His courage reminded me that I could be brave, even if everything felt upside down. And when I read The Catcher in the Rye, Holden Caulfield's loneliness echoed my own, teaching me that I wasn't alone in feeling lost. Books became more than just stories, they became my friends, my teachers, my hope. They gave me tips for life without even meaning to. Like how Anne of Green Gables taught me it's okay to be different, and To Kill a Mockingbird showed me the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. I remember one winter night when everything felt too much. I curled up in my bed, the walls closing in, tears streaming down my face. I thought, I can't do this anymore. My mind was racing, my heart pounding painfully. But instead of giving up, I grabbed the closest book, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Page after page, I escaped into a world where love, courage, and friendship mattered. For those hours, the pain in my chest loosened. I felt lighter. Reading didn't fix everything, but it gave me moments where I could breathe, and sometimes that's all you need to keep going, just a moment. Books taught me that pain is a part of life, but so is joy. And they reminded me that hope is always waiting, even in the darkest times. By the time I turned 16, reading had become my way of understanding the world and myself. I started writing too, pouring out everything I felt onto paper. It was messy at first, but it helped. Words became a way to untangle the knots in my heart. I wrote about sadness, about anger, about missing Dad and feeling invisible. I wrote about the tiny sparks of happiness, like the time Mom and I danced in the kitchen or the smell of rain on a summer day. And through writing, I discovered that sharing my story made the weight inside me a little lighter. One of the most important things I've learned is that it's okay to struggle. Life isn't always easy. Sometimes it's really, really hard. But reading showed me that no matter how hard things get, there's always a way through. Stories gave me hope when I had none, reminded me to keep going when I wanted to stop, and maybe, just maybe, they can do the same for you. So here's my advice, Red. Read when you're happy, read when you're sad. Read when you feel lost and when you feel found. Books are like quiet friends who stay with you no matter what. They'll hold your hand through the darkest nights and cheer you on during your brightest days. You don't have to read big, complicated books. Start with anything: a comic, a novel, even poetry. Just open the first page and let the words take you somewhere new. Because in every story, there's a little bit of magic, and sometimes magic is exactly what you need. And as life went on, I found more stories, each one adding something new to me. Some books made me cry harder than I thought possible, while others made me laugh out loud in the middle of the night. But all of them taught me something about love, courage, loss, forgiveness, and the complicated beauty of being human. I remember when I read The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. Hazel and Augustus' love story hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. I cried until my pillow was soaked, mourning fictional characters like they were real people. But the story also gave me a strange kind of peace. It made me realize that even when we know life will hurt, we can still choose to love deeply, laugh freely, and live fully. It wasn't just fiction that helped me, though. I also found comfort in books about mental health guides that talked about anxiety, depression, and how to handle big emotions. Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig felt like a hand on my shoulder, telling me, it's okay not to be okay. Those pages gave me tools to deal with the days when my brain felt like an endless storm, swirling with sadness, fear, and self-doubt. They reminded me that healing isn't a straight line but a journey with ups and downs. One memory stands out. It was a rainy afternoon, and I had stayed home from school because I couldn't face the world that day. I was curled up in bed, feeling numb and heavy. My bookshelf stared at me from across the room, and after what felt like hours, I got up and grabbed Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. It was a book about creativity, fear, and how to live a curious life. As I read, a strange thing happened. A spark reignited inside me, small but unmistakable. I started to wonder, what if I could create something? What if, instead of drowning in sadness, I could build something beautiful out of it? The thought was both terrifying and exciting, but it was the first time I felt that maybe, just maybe, there was more waiting for me in the world than pain. After that, I started writing even more. I wrote stories, poems, letters to my future self. Writing became a place where I could let out all the emotions I was too afraid to speak aloud. Some nights I cried as I wrote, pouring my heart onto the page. And when I looked at those words, I realized something amazing. My sadness, my struggles, they didn't make me weak. They made me real. Books didn't just help me understand myself, they also helped me connect with others. I started a small book club at school, just a few of us meeting in the library during lunch to talk about the stories we were reading. There was Jake, who used books to escape his parents' constant fighting, and Sarah, who said she found pieces of herself in every character she read. For the first time, I didn't feel so alone. Talking about books was like sharing secret pieces of our souls. We laughed together, cried together, and, most importantly, we healed together. One day, I gave a book to my mom, Wild by Cheryl Strayed. It was about a woman who lost everything but found herself again through a long, painful journey. I wasn't sure if Mom would read it, but a week later, she hugged me tight, tears in her eyes, and whispered, thank you. That moment made me realize how powerful stories can be, not just for ourselves, but for the people we love. They can open doors we didn't even know were closed, help us understand each other in ways we never thought possible. And here's the thing about reading: it teaches you empathy. When you step into someone else's story, you learn what it feels like to walk in their shoes. You understand struggles you've never faced and joys you've never known. It makes you softer, kinder, and more patient with others and with yourself. Through books, I learned to forgive Dad, not because what happened was okay, but because holding on to anger was too heavy. I learned to see Mom not just as my mother, but as a person, doing her best even when life knocked her down. And I learned that I, too, could survive things I once thought would break me. Now, as I stand on the edge of adulthood, books are still my companions. They remind me that life will always be unpredictable, full of joy and sorrow, hope and loss. But no matter what happens, there will always be another story to read, another adventure waiting between the pages. And when things get hard, and they will, I know I'll have the words of others to guide me, like stars lighting my way through the dark. If you're reading this and struggling, please know that you are not alone. There is hope, even when it feels far away. And sometimes you can find that hope in the most unexpected places, like inside the pages of a book. Reading doesn't fix everything, but it makes the hard days a little softer. It teaches you that, just like in the best stories, the worst moments are not the end. They're only the middle. And the middle is where growth happens. So, pick up a book. It doesn't matter what kind. Just start. Let the words wrap around you like a blanket on a cold night. Let the characters become your friends. Let the stories remind you that you're not alone, and that, no matter what, there is always a reason to keep turning the page. Because, in the end, we are all stories in the making. And every story, yours included, is worth reading.